Can y'all see me? I tried to go live like for 5 minutes and it would not let me. And then I finally got it. Okay. Oh shit. Oh wow, y'all are here. All right. We're starting on chapter 68 and we're reading until chapter 72. We are officially at part 2 of the book, Gods and Gates, and yeah, we're over halfway done with this, so we're in the final stretch. Scary. All right. Chapter 68. The black towers of Morath rose above the smoking forges and campfires of the valley below like a cluster of dark swords raised to the sky. They jutted into the low clouds, some broken and chipped, some still standing proud, the wrath and final act of Kaltain Rompier written all over them. Spreading his soot-colored wings wide, Dorian caught a wind that reeked of iron and carrion and banked around the fortress. He'd learned to harness winds during these long days of travel, and though he'd covered much of the journey as a swift, red-tailed hawk, he'd shifted this morning into an ordinary crow. Flocks of them circled Morath, their calls as plentiful as the ringing of hammers on anvils throughout the valley. Even with hell unleashed in the north, there was still more camped down here, more troops, more witches. Dorian followed the example of the other crows and gave the wyverns a wide berth, flying low as coven after coven went about their scouting or reporting or training. So many iron teeth, all waiting. He circled Morath's uppermost towers, scanning the keep, the army in the valley, and the wyverns in their lofty eyries. With each flap of his wings, the weight of what he'd hidden in a rocky outcropping 10 miles north grew heavier. It would have been madness to bring the 2 keys here, so he had buried them in the shale rock, not even daring to mark the spot. He could only pray it was far enough away to avoid Erwin's detection. At the side of a tower, 2 servants bearing armloads of laundry emerged from a small door and began winding up the exterior stair, heads bowed as if trying to ignore the army that rippled far below, or the wyverns whose bellows echoed off the black rock. There, that door. Dorian flapped toward it, willing his heart to calm, his scent, the one thing that might doom him, to remain unmarked. But none of the iron teeth flying overhead noticed the crow that did not smell like a crow, and the 2 laundresses winding up the tower stairs didn't call out as he landed on the small stone railing and folded his wings neatly. A hop, and he was on the stones. A shift, muscles and bones burning, and the world had become smaller, infinitely deadlier, and infinitely less aware of his presence. Dorian's whiskers twitched, his oversized ears cocking. The roar of the wyverns rocked through his small furred body, and he gritted his teeth. Large, almost too big for his little mouth, the reek grew near nauseating. He could smell everything. The lingering freshness of the laundry that had passed by, the gamey musk of some sort of broth clinging to the laundresses after their lunch. He'd never thought mice to be extraordinary, yet even soaring as a hawk, he had not felt this alertness, this level of being awake. In a world designed to kill them, he supposed mice needed such sharpness to survive. Dorian allowed himself one long breath before he squeezed beneath the shut door and into Morath itself. I'm scared. Never mind. His senses might have been sharper, but he had never realized how daunting a set of stairs truly was without human legs. He kept to the shadows, willing himself into dust and gloom with every pair of feet that strode by. Some were armored, some were booted, some in worn shoes, all the wearers pale and miserable. No witches, thank the gods, and no vowed princes or their grunts. Certainly no sign of Erwin. The tower he'd entered was a servant's stair, one Manon had laid out during one of her various explanations to Aelin. It was thanks to her that he followed a mental map, confirmed by his circling overhead for the past few hours. Erwin's tower, that's where he'd begin. And if the vowed king was there, he'd figure it out. Whether he might repay Erwin for all he'd done, regardless of Kaltain's warning. His breathing ragged, Dorian reached the bottom of the winding steps, curling his long tail around him as he peered to the dim hallway ahead. From here, he'd need to cross the entire level, take another staircase up, another hall, and then, if he was lucky, Erwin's tower would be there. Manon had never gained access to it, never known what waited up there, only that it was guarded by Valg at all hours, a good enough place to begin his hunt. His ears twitched. No approaching steps. No cats, mercifully. Dorian turned the corner, his grayish-brown fur blending into the rock, and scuttled along the groove where the wall met the floor. A guard stood on watch at the end of the hall, staring at nothing. He loomed, large as a mountain, as Dorian approached. Dorian had nearly reached the guard, and the crossroads he monitored when he felt it. The stir, and then the silence. Lord. Even the guard straightened, glancing to the slit of a window behind him. Dorian halted, tucking himself into a shadow. Nothing. No cries or shouts yet. The guard returned to his post, but scanned the hall. Dorian remained still and quiet, waiting. Had they discovered his presence? Sent out a call? It couldn't have been as easy as it had seemed. Erwin no doubt had traps to alert him of any enemy presence. Rushing, light steps sounded around the corner, and the guard turned toward them. "What is it?" the man demanded. The approaching servant didn't check his pace. "Who knows these days but the company we keep? I'm not lingering to find out." Then the man hurried on, rushing past Dorian, rushing towards something, not rushing towards something, but away. Dorian's whiskers flicked as he scented the air. Nothing. Waiting in a hallway that would do no good, but to plunge ahead, to seek out whatever might be happening. Not wise, either. There was one place he might hear something, where people were always gossiping, even at Morath. So Dorian ventured back down the hall, down another set of stairs, his little legs barely able to move fast enough, toward the kitchens, hot and bright with the light of the great hearth. Lady Elide had worked here, had known these people, not Valg, but people conscripted into service, people who would undoubtedly talk about the comings and goings of this keep, just as they had at the palace in Rifthold. The various servants and cooks were indeed waiting, staring toward the stair on the opposite side of the cavernous kitchen, as was the lean, green-eyed tabby cat across the room. Oh! Dorian made himself as small as possible, but the beast paid him no mind, its attention fixed on the stairs, as if it knew, too. And then steps, quick and hushed. 2 women entered, empty trays in their hands, both wan and trembling. A man who had to be the head cook asked the women, "Did you see anything?" One of the women shook her head. "They weren't in the council room yet, thank the gods." Her partner's hands wobbled as she set down her tray. "They will be soon, though. Lucky you got out before they came," someone said, "or you might have found yourself part of lunch, too." Lucky, indeed. Dorian lingered, but the kitchen resumed its rhythms, satisfied 2 of its own had made it back safely. The council room, perhaps the same Manon had described, where Erwin preferred to have his meetings, and if Erwin himself was headed there. Dorian scuttled out, heeding the mental map Manon had crafted. A fool, only a fool, would willingly go to see Erwin, risk it. Perhaps he had a death wish. Perhaps he truly was a fool, but he wanted to see him. Had to see him, this creature who had ruined so many things, who stood poised to devour their world. He had to look at him, this thing, who had ordered him enslaved, who had butchered Sorsja. And if he was fortunate, maybe he'd kill him. He could remain in this form and strike, but it would be so much more satisfying to return to his own body, to draw Damaris and end him, to let Erwin see the pale band around his throat and know who killed him, yet he hadn't broken him yet. And then Dorian would find the key. The silence showed him the way, perhaps more so than the mental map he'd memorized. Halls emptied out. The air became thick, cold, as if Erwin's corruption leaked from him. There was no guards, human or Valg, standing watch before the open doors. No one to mark the hooded figure who strode in, black cape flowing. Dorian hurried, skittering after that figure just as the door shut. His magic swelled, and he willed it to calm, to coil, an asp poised to strike. One blow to get Erwin down, then he'd shift and draw Damaris. The figure halted, cloak swaying, and Dorian dashed for the nearest shadow, by the crack between the door and floor. The chamber was ordinary, save for a table of black glass in its center, and the golden-haired, golden-eyed man seated at it. Manon had not lied. Erwin had indeed shed Parrington's skin for something far fairer. Though still dressed in finery, Dorian realized that, as the Val King rose, his gray jacket and pants immaculately tailored. No weapons lay at his side, no hint of the word key. But he could feel Erwin's power, the wrongness leaking from him, could feel it and remember it the way that power had felt inside him, curdling his soul. Ice cracked in his veins. Quick. He had to be quick. Strike now. No! No! This is an unexpected delight, Erwin said, his voice young and yet not. He gestured to the spread of food, fruits and cured meats. Shall we? Dorian's magic faltered as two moon-pale, slender hands rose from the folds of the black cloak and pushed back the cowl. The woman beneath was not beautiful, not in the classical way, yet with her jet-black hair, her eyes dark, her red lips, she was striking, mesmerizing. Those red lips curved, revealing bone-white teeth. Cold licked down Dorian's spine as at the pointed, delicate ears peeked above the curtain of dark hair. Faye. Is that who I think it is? Is that who I think it is? No, it can't be who I think it is. It's not, right? The woman, female, was Faye. She removed her cloak to reveal a flowing gown of deepest purple before she settled herself across the table from Erwin. Not an ounce of hesitation or fear checked her graceful movements. You know why I have come, then. Erwin smiled as he sat, pouring a goblet of wine for the female, then for himself, and all thoughts of killing vanished from Dorian's head as the Val King asked, "Is there any other reason you would deign to visit Morath?" Maeve? What's going on? What's going on? Chapter 69. Orinth had not been this quiet since the day Adian and the remnants of Terrason's court had marched to Thoralis. Even then there had been a hum to the ancient city erected between the mouth of the Florine and the edge of the Staghorns, oak walled, a ripple of wood to the west. Then the white walls had still been shining. Now they lay stained and grayish, as bleak as the sky, while Adian, Lysandra, and their allies strode through the towering metal doors of the western gate. Here the walls were 6 feet thick, the blocks of stone so heavy that legend claimed Brannon had conscripted giants from the Staghorns to heave them into place. Adian would give anything for those long-forgotten giants to find their way to the city now, for the ancient wolf tribes to come racing down the towering peaks behind the city, the lost Fae of Terrason with them, for any of the old myths to emerge from the shadows of time, as Rolf and his Mycenaeans had done. But he knew their luck had run out. Their companions knew it too. Even Ansel of Briarcliff had gone as silent as Ilias and his assassins, her shoulders bowed. She had been that way since the heads of her warriors had landed amongst their ranks, her wine-red hair dull, her steps heavy. He knew her horror, her guilt, wished he had a moment to comfort the young queen beyond a swift apology. But Ilias, it seemed, had taken it upon himself to do just that, riding beside Ansel in steady, quiet company. The city had been laid at the feet of the towering, near-mythic castle built atop a jutting piece of rock, a castle that rose so high its uppermost turret seemed to pierce the sky. Once that castle had glowed, roses and creeping plants draped along its sun-warmed stones, the song of 1,000 fountains singing in every hall and courtyard. Once, proud banners had flapped from those impossibly high towers, standing watch over the mountains and forest and river and plain of Thoralis below. It had become a mausoleum. No one spoke as they trudged up the steep, winding streets. Grim-faced people either stopped to stare or continued rushing to prepare for the siege. There was no way to outrun it, not with the Staghorns at their backs, Oakwall to the west, and the army advancing from the south. Yes, they might flee eastward across the plains, but to where? To Suria, where it would be only a matter of time before they were found. To the hinterlands beyond the mountains, where the winters were so brutal they claimed no mortal could survive. The people of Orinth were as trapped as their army. Adia knew he should square his shoulders, should grin at these people, his people, and offer them a shred of courage. Yet he couldn't stop himself from wondering how many had lost family, friends, in the battle by the river, and the weeks of fighting before that. How many were still praying that the streaming lines of soldiers making their way toward the city would reveal a loved one? His fault, his burden, his choices had led them here. His choices had left so many bodies in the snow. A veritable path of them from the southern border all the way to the Florine. The white castle loomed, larger with every hill they ascended. At least they had that. The advantage of higher ground. At least they had that. Darrow and the other lords were waiting, not in the throne room, but in the spacious council chamber on the other side of the palace. The last time Adian had been in the room, a preening Ardalanian prick had presided over the meeting. The Viceroy of Terrasin, he'd called himself. The Viceroy. Viceroy? Roy? I can't make that sound. Viceroy. Sorry. It seemed the man had taken his finery, chairs, and wall hangings included, and run off the moment the king had been killed. So an ancient work table now served as their war desk, an assortment of half-rotting chairs from various rooms in the castle around it. Currently occupied by Darrow, Sloane, Gunnar, and Ironwood. Murtaugh, to Adian's surprise, was amongst them. They rose as Adian and his companions entered, not out of any respect to Adian, but for the royals with him. Ansel of Briarcliff surveyed the piss-poor space, as she'd done for the entirety of the walk through the dim and dreary castle, and let out a low whistle. "You weren't kidding when you said Ardalan raided your coffers." Her first words in hours. Days. Adian grunted. To the copper. He halted before the table. Darrow demanded, "Where's Killian?" Adian gave him a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Wren tensed, reading the warning in that smile. "He bade me to go ahead while he led the army here." Lie. Darrow rolled his eyes, then fixed them upon Rolf, who was still frowning at the shabby castle. "We have you to thank for the lucky retreat, I take it." Rolf fixed his sea-green stare upon the man. "That you do?" Darrow sat again, the other lords following suit. "And you are?" "Privateer Rolf," the pirate said smoothly. "Commander in Her Majesty's Armada, and heir to the Mycenaean people." The other lords straightened. "The Mycenaeans vanished an age ago," Lord Sloane said, but the man noted the sword at Rolf's side, the sea dragon pommel, had no doubt spied the fleet creeping up the Florine. "Vanished, but did not die out," Rolf countered, "and we have come to fulfill an old debt." Darrow rubbed at his temple. Old. Darrow truly looked his age as he leaned against the table edge. "Well, we have the gods to thank for that," Lysandra said, simmering with rage. "You have Aelin to thank for that." The man narrowed his eyes, and Adian's temper honed itself into something lethal, but Darrow's voice was exhausted, heavy, as he asked, "Not pretending today, lady." Lysandra only pointed to Rolf, then Ansel, then Galen. Swept her arm to the window, to where the Fey royals and Ilias of the Silent Assassins tended to their own on the castle grounds. All of them came here because of Aelin, not you. So before you sneer that there is no Her Majesty's Armada, allow me to tell you that there is, and you are not a part of it. Darrow let out a long sigh, rubbing his temple again. "You're dismissed from this room. Like hell she is," Adian growled, but Murtaugh cut in. "There is someone, lady, who would like to see you." Lysandra raised her brows, and the old man winced. "I do not wish to risk leaving her in Allsbrook alone. Evangeline is in the northern tower, in my former granddaughter's bedroom. She spotted your approach from the window, and it was all I could do to convince her to wait." Aww. A polite, clever way to diffuse the brewing storm. Adian debated telling Lysandra that she could stay, but Lysandra was already moving, dark hair flowing behind her. When she'd left, Adian said, "She's fought on the very front lines at every battle, nearly died against our enemies. I didn't see any of you bothering to do the same." The group of old lords frowned with distaste, yet it was Darrow who shifted in his seat, slightly, as if Adian had struck upon a festering wound. "To be too old to fight," Darrow said quietly, "while younger men and women die is not as easy as you think, Adian." He glanced down to the nameless sword at Adian's side. "It is not easy at all." Adian debated telling him to ask the people who died if that wasn't easy either, but Prince Galen cleared his throat. "What preparations are underway for a siege?" The Terrasen lords didn't seem to appreciate being questioned, but they opened their hateful mouths and spoke. An hour later, the others seen to their rooms, then to baths and hot meals. Adian found himself following her scent. She had... I don't like him being anywhere near her anymore, and it makes me really sad. Y'all, I was rooting for them. And then he had to go and be a man and ruin everything. She had gone not to the North Tower and the ward who awaited her, but to the throne room. The towering oak doors were cracked, the two rearing stags carved on them staring him down. Once, gold filigree had covered the immortal flame, shining between their proud antlers. During the past decade, someone had peeled off the gold, either for spite or quick coin. Adian slipped through the doors, the cavernous chamber like the ghost of an old friend. How many times had he bemoaned being forced to dress in his finery and stand beside the thrones atop the dais at the far back of the pillar-lined room? How many times had he caught Aelin nodding off during an endless day of pageantry? Then, the banners of all the Terrasen territories had hung from the ceiling. Then, the pale marble floors had been so polished he could see his reflection in them. Then, an antlered throne had sat upon the dais, towering and primal, built from the shred horns of the immortal stags of Oakwald. Stags now butchered and burned, as the antler throne had been after the Battle of Theralis. The king had ordered it done right on the battlefield. It was before that empty dais that Lysandra stood, staring at the white marble as if she could see the throne that had once been there, see the other, smaller thrones that had sat beside it. I hadn't realized that Ardalan wrecked this place so thoroughly, she said, either scenting him or recognizing the cadence of his footsteps. The bones of it are still intact, Adian said. For how much longer that will remain true, I don't know. Lysandra's green eyes slid toward him, dim with exhaustion and sorrow. Deep down, she said quietly, some part of me thought I'd live to see her sitting here. She pointed to the dais, to where the antler throne had once been. Deep down, I thought we might actually make it somehow, even with Morath and the lock and all of it. There was no hope in her face. It was perhaps because of it that she bothered to speak to him. I thought so too, Adian said with equal quiet, though the words echoed in the vast empty chamber. I thought so too. Oh. Damn! Not me about to cry. I don't have any eyeliner on today. I feel so naked. Oh. Speaking of sad, I won't spoil anything, but I went to go watch Avatar, the new Avatar movie that came out. When I tell you, I almost had to walk out of the theater because I was crying so hard. Y'all, I was crying so hard. And I was literally like, I had to like bite down on my tongue. I was sobbing. I was sobbing. How am I feeling? How do you think I'm feeling? I feel a little depressed right now. It's just not looking good for anyone involved. For literally no one. Everyone is suffering. Chapter 70. God. At this point, I don't even know if we're getting a happy ending with being sick. I feel good. I think my vaccine, well, obviously my vaccine helped me out a lot. So I was back up. I went back to work, like, what, Wednesday? Yeah, I went back to work on Wednesday. It was just Sunday, Monday, and a little bit of Tuesday, I was sick. But yeah, I feel better. Thank you for asking. Chapter 70. The Queen of the Fae had come to Morath. That's another thing. I don't even care about Erwin at this point. Like, obviously I have qualms with him, but compared to Maeve, I have no beef with Erwin. Like, Erwin can try to do his thing all he wants. My main focus, my villain right now, my main villain, my only villain right now that I want dead is Maeve. She's the only one. Erwin, really, he's done a lot, and I'm not trying to say that he hasn't done a lot, but like, I'm just not worried about him. I'm really not worried about killing him. I'm worried about killing Maeve right now. I want her. Dorian forced his heartbeat to calm, his breathing to steady as Maeve sipped from her wine. You do know me then, the Fae Queen said, studying the Val King. He very much seems like a side character at this point. Exactly. He was the main evil for like how long? And now suddenly I feel like he's just kind of been pushed aside, and we're all geared and focused on Maeve. Erwin paused, goblet half raised to his lips. Are you not Maeve, Queen of Doranel? He doesn't know who she is. He knows who she is, but he doesn't know who she is. Oh. Aelin. Had Maeve brought Aelin here to be sold to Erwin? God. Oh, Dorian doesn't know that Aelin is back. Oh. He thinks that Aelin is here. Is he gonna do something stupid because he thinks Aelin is here? Maeve tipped her head and laughed. Millennia apart, and you have forgotten even your own sister-in-law. Dorian was glad he was small and quiet and unmarked. He might have very well swayed. Erwin went still. You. Maeve smiled. Me. Those golden eyes roved over the Fae Queen. In a Fae skin. All this time. I'm disappointed you didn't figure it out. The pulse of Erwin's power slithered over Dorian. So similar, so terribly similar to the oily power of that Val Prince. Did you know what you have? The Val King silenced himself, straightened his shoulders. I suppose I should thank you then, Erwin said, mastering himself. Oh, do you know? Do you know what you... Oh, sorry. Without you betraying my brother, I would not have discovered this delightful world. It would not stand primed to conquer it. He sipped from his goblet. But the question remains, why come here? Why reveal yourself now? My ancient enemy, perhaps enemy no longer. It was never your enemy, Maeve said, her voice unruffled. Your brothers, however, were mine. And yet you married Orcus, knowing full well what he is like. Perhaps I should have married you when you offered. A small smile, coy and horrible. But I was so young then, easily misled. Erwin let out a low laugh that made Dorian's stomach turn. You were never those things, and now here we are. If Aelin was here, if Dorian could find her, perhaps they could take on the Val Queen and King. This man. Here we are, Maeve said. You, poised to sweep this continent, and me, willing to help you. Erwin crossed an ankle over a knee. Again, why? Maeve's fingers smoothed over the facets of her goblet. My people have betrayed me. After all I have done for them, all I have protected them. They rose up against me. The army I had gathered refused to march. My nobles, my servants, refused to kneel. I am Queen of Doranel no longer. It smells fishy. I can guess who might be behind such a thing, Erwin said. Darkness flickered in the room, terrible and cold. I had Aelin of the wildfire contained. I had hoped to bring her here to you when she was ready, but the sentinel I assigned to oversee her care made a grave error. I myself will admit that I was deceived, and now she is again free, and took it upon herself to dispatch letters to some influential individuals in Doranel. She is likely already on this continent. Relief shuddered through him. Erwin waved a hand. In a kneel, expending her power carelessly. Maeve's eyes glowed. She cost me my kingdom, my throne, my circle of trusted warriors. Any neutrality I might have had in this war, any mercy I might have offered, vanished the moment she and her mate left. Funny how she's acting like Aelin did all of this unprovoked. Funny. Oh my god. There's a hair in my eye. They'd found her. Somehow they'd found her. And Anil, did he dare hope Kale might also be there? Dorian might have roared his victory, but Maeve continued. Aelin Galathinius will come for me, if she survives you. I do not plan to allow her the chance to do so. Erwin's smile grew. So you think to ally with me? Only together can we ensure Brannon's bloodline is toppled forever, never to rise again. Then why not kill her, when you had her? Would you have done so, brother? Would you not have tried to turn her? Erwin's silence was confirmation enough. Then the Val King asked, "You lay a great deal before me, sister. Do you expect me to believe you so readily?" "I anticipated that." Her lips curved. "After all, I have nothing left but my own powers." Erwin said nothing, as if well aware of the dance the queen led him in. She extended a moon-white hand toward the center of the room. "There is something else I might bring to the table, should it interest you." A flick of her slender fingers, and a hole simply appeared in the heart of the chamber. Dorian started, curling himself farther into shadow and dust, not bothering to hide his trembling, as a horror only true darkness could craft appeared on the other side of the hole. The portal. "I had forgotten you'd mastered that gift," Erwin said, his golden eyes flaring at the thing that now bowed to them, its pincers clicking. The spider. "And I'd forgotten that they still bothered to answer to you," Erwin went on. "When the Fae cast me aside," Maeve said, smiling faintly at the enormous spider, "I returned to those who have always been loyal to me." "The Stygian spiders have become their own creatures," Erwin countered. "Your list of allies remains short." Maeve shook her head, dark hair shining. "These are not the Stygian spiders." Through the portal, Dorian could make out jagged, ashen rock, mountains. "These are the KOA, as the people of the southern continent call them, my most loyal handmaidens." Dorian's heart thundered as the spider bowed again. Erwin's face turned cool and bored. "What use would I have for them?" He gestured to the windows beyond, the hellscape he'd crafted. "I've created armies of beasts loyal to me. I do not need a few hundred spiders." Maeve didn't so much as falter. "My handmaidens are resourceful, their webs long-reaching. They speak to me of the goings-on in the world, and spoke to me of the next phase of your grand plans." Dorian braced himself. Erwin stiffened. Maeve drawled, "The Valg princesses need hosts. You have difficulty in securing ones powerful enough to hold them." The Khaganate princess managed to survive the one you planted in her, and is mistress of her own body once more. Valg princesses in the southern continent. Kale. "I'm listening," Erwin said. Maeve pointed to the spider still bowing at the portal. The portal to the southern continent opened as easily as a window. "Why bother with human hosts for the 6 remaining princesses, when you might create ones far more powerful and willing?" Erwin's gold eyes slid to the spider. "You and your kin would allow this," his first words to the creature. The spider's pincers clicked, her horrible eyes blinking. "It would be an honor to prove our loyalty to our queen." Maeve smiled at the spider. Dorian shuddered. "Immortal, powerful hosts," Maeve purred to the Val King, "with their innate gifts. Imagine how the princesses might thrive within them, both spider and princess becoming a horror beyond all reckoning." Erwin said nothing, and Maeve flicked her fingers, the portal and spider vanishing. She rose, graceful as a shadow. "I shall let you consider this alliance, if that is what you wish. The KOA will do as I bid them, and will happily march under your banner. Yet what shall I say to my brother when I see him again?" Maeve angled her head. "Do you plan to see Orcus again? Why do you think I've spent so long building this army, preparing this world, if not to greet my brothers once more, if not to impress them with what I have made here? Erwin would bring the Val Kings back to Aurelia, if given the chance, and if he did—" Maeve studied the seated king. "Tell Orcus that I grew bored of waiting for him to come home from his conquests." The spider smiled. "I would much rather have joined him." Erwin blinked, the only sign of his surprise. Then he waved an elegant hand, and the doors opened on a phantom wind. "I shall think on this, sister, for your brazenness, right, whatever. In approaching me, I will allow you to stay as my guest until I decide." 2 guards appeared in the hall, and Dorian braced himself, paused tensing on the stones. "They will show you to your room." To remain in the chamber for too long might lead to his exposure, but he had not sensed the key on the Val King. Later. He could keep looking later, contemplate the best way to kill the king too, if he was foolish enough to risk it. For now. Maeve gathered her cloak, sweeping it around her, and Dorian rushed forward, ducking into its shadows once more as the Fae Queen prowled out. The guards led her down a hall, up a winding stair, and into a tower adjacent to Erwin's. It was well appointed, in polished oak furniture and crisp linen sheets. likely a remnant of the years this had been a human stronghold and not a home of horrors. As the door shut behind Maeve, she leaned into the iron-studded wood and sighed. Do you plan to hide in that... Shit. He's so dumb. He's so dumb. Why would he... No, because why would he literally follow her? Why would he do this? Do you plan to hide in that pathetic form all day? Dorian lunged for the gap between the door and the floor, but her black-butted foot slammed down upon his tail. Pain speared through his bones, but her foot remained in place. His magic surged, lashing, but a dark wind wrapped talons around it, choking, stifling. The Fae Queen smiled down at him. You were not a very skilled spy, King of Ardalan. He should have turned himself into a fucking flea. A flea would be an amazing spy. Just a little flea. A flea, or like a fruit fly, or just a regular fly. God damn. Chapter 71. Dorian's magic struggled, roaring as her dark power held him in its net. If he could turn into a wyvern and rip her head off. But Maeve smiled, weary and amused, and lifted her foot from his poor tail, then released her grip on his magic. He shuddered at the dark, festering power as it caressed talons down his magic, brushed the shimmering raw core, and vanished. It was an effort not to gag, not to touch the pale band on his neck just to be sure it was gone. Maeve's smile remained on her red mouth, his magic still shivering as the feel of her power lingered, the power to break into minds, to rip apart the psyche, a different sort of enemy, one that would require another route, a reckless fool's route, a courtier's route. So he shifted, fur becoming skin, paws into hands. When he at last stood before the Fae Queen, man once more, her smile grew. How handsome you are. Dorian sketched a brow. He didn't dare reach for Damaris at his side. How did you know? You did not think I beheld you, your scent, and the feel of your power in Aylin's memories. She angled her head. Though my spy did not report your interest in shifting. Kyrene? Whatever. Horror crept through him. Maeve strode deeper into the chamber and took up a seat on the bench before the foot of the bed, as regally as if she had sat upon her throne. How do you think the matrons knew where to find you? Kyrene was only at the camp for a day, he managed to say. Do you truly believe that there are no other spiders up there in the mountains? They all answer to her, and to me. I'm nervous. She needed only whisper once to the right ones, and they found me, and found the iron teeth. Maeve ran a hand along the lap of her gown. Whether Erwin knows of your gifts remains to be seen. Before you killed her, Kyrene certainly informed me that you were different. He did not regret killing her one bit, but that is neither here nor there. Is it Kyrene or Cyrene? When I was reading it, I don't think I read it as Cyrene. I think I read it as Kyrene. Kyrene is dead, and you are a long way from the arms of Manon Blackbeak. Dorian braced a hand on Damaris's hilt. Maeve smiled at the ancient sword. It seems the Queen of Terrasen learned to share. She's acquired quite the trove, hasn't she? Dorian started. If Maeve knew anything Aylin possessed. I know that too, Maeve said, her dark eyes depthless. Damaris warmed in his grip. And no, the spider did not guess at that truth, at least. She scanned him. Where are they now? Dorian Havillard. Something slithering and sharp slid along his mind, trying to get in. Dorian's magic roared. A sheet of ice slammed into those metal talons, blasted them away. Maeve chuckled, and Dorian blinked, finding the room also coated with frost. A dramatic but effective method. Dorian smirked at her. Think I would be foolish enough to allow you into my mind? Still keeping one hand on the sword, he slid the other into a pocket, if only to hide its shaking, or to tell you where they are hidden. It was worth the attempt, Maeve said. Why not sound the alarm? Was his only reply. Maeve leaned back, studying him again. You want what I want. Erwin has it. Does that not make you and I allies of a sort? You must be mad to think I would ever give you the keys. Am I? What would you do with them, Dorian? Destroy them? What would you do? Conquer the world? Maeve laughed. Oh, nothing so common as that. I would make sure that Erwin and his brothers could never return. Damaris remained warm in his hand. The Queen spoke the truth, or some part of it. You'll admit so easily that you plan to betray Erwin. Why do you think I came here? Maeve asked. My people have cast me out, and I guessed you would seek out Morath soon enough. Damaris's warmth did not falter, yet Dorian said, You cannot think I believe you came here to win my allegiance, not when I saw that you planned to offer Erwin your spiders to assist his princesses. He didn't want to know what the vowed princesses could do, why Erwin had delayed his unleashing of them. A small sacrifice on my part to win his trust. Damaris held warm. We're not so different, you and I have nothing to lose now, thanks to your friend. Truth, truth, truth. And there it was, the opening he'd been waiting for. Keeping his mind encased in that wall of ice, his magic sizing up the enemy before them, Dorian let his hand slide from Damaris's hilt, let her see his thawing distrust as he said, Aelin seems to be skilled at wrecking the kingdoms of other people while protecting her own, and at letting others pay her debts. Dorian stilled, though his magic continued its vigil, monitoring her dark power as it paced the barrier of his mind. Isn't that why you're here? Maeve asked. To be the sacrifice so that Aelin need not destroy herself. She clicked her tongue. Such a terrible waste for either of you to pay the price for Elena's foolishness. It is. Truth. Can I tell you what Aelin revealed to me? During those moments I was able to peer into her mind. Dorian didn't dare reach for Damaris again. You enslaved her, he growled. I don't want to hear a damn thing about it. Maeve brushed her curtain of hair over her shoulder, humming. Aelin is glad it's you. She merely said, She's hoping she'll be too late in returning, that you'll accomplish what you've set out to do, and spare her from a terrible choice. She's a mate and a kingdom. I don't blame her. The sharpness in his words wasn't entirely faked. Don't you? Don't you have a kingdom to look after? One no less powerful and noble than Terrasen? When he didn't answer, Maeve said, Aelin has been freed for weeks now, and she has not come to find you. The continent is a big place. A knowing smile. She could find you, if she wished, and yet she went to Anil. He knew what manner of game she played. His magic slipped a fraction, an opening. Maeve's own lashed for it, seeking a way in. She'd barely crossed the threshold when he gritted his teeth and threw her from his mind again, the wall of ice colliding with her. If you want me to ally with you, you're picking one hell of a way to show it. Maeve laughed softly. Can you blame me for trying? Dorian didn't answer, and stared at her for a long minute, made a show of considering. Every bit of courtly intrigue and training kept his face unreadable. You think I'd betray my friends that easily? Is it betrayal, Maeve mused, to find an alternative to you when Aelin Galathini is paying the ultimate price? It's what I intended for her all along, to keep her from being a sacrifice to unfeeling gods. Those gods are powerful beings. Then where are they now? She gestured to the room, the keep. Silence answered. They're afraid. Of me. Of Erwin. Of the keys. She gave him a serpent smile. They're afraid of you. You and Aelin Firebringer. Powerful enough to send them home, or to damn them. He didn't answer. She wasn't entirely wrong. Why not defy them? Why bow to their wishes? What have they ever done for you? Hold up. Because she would have had me. She really would have. Because what have the gods done? Like, why do I have to pay this price? This isn't even my battle. She's not making sense. She's good. Oh, she's good. Sorceress pained face flashed before his eyes. There is no other way, he said at last, to end this. The keys could end it. To wield them, rather than seal them back into the gate. They could do anything, Maeve went on. Destroy Erwin. Banish those gods back to their home if that's what they want. She angled her head. Open another door to realms of peace and resting. To the woman who would undoubtedly be there. Damn, she's good. The dark, predatory power stalking his mind faded away, pulled back to its mistress. Aelin had done it once, opened a door to see Nehemiah. It was possible. The encounters with Gavin and Kaltain only confirmed them. What if you didn't only ally with me? He asked at last. But with Ardalan itself. Maeve didn't answer, as if she were surprised by the offer. A bigger alliance than merely working together to find the key, Dorian mused, and shrugged. You have no kingdom, and clearly want another. Why not lend your gifts to Ardalan? To me. Bring your spiders to our side. A breath ago you were livid that I enslaved your friend. Oh, I still am. Yet I'm not so proud to refuse to consider the possibility. You want a kingdom? Then join mine. Ally with me, work with me, to get what we need from Erwin, and I shall make you queen of a far bigger territory, with a people who will not rise up against you. A new start, I suppose. When she still did not speak, Dorian leaned against the door, the portrait of a courtly nonchalance. You think I'm trying to trick you? Perhaps I am. And man in Blackbeak? What of your promises to her? I've made her no promises regarding my throne, and she wants nothing to do with them anyway. He didn't hide the bitterness as he shrugged again. Marriages have been built on far more volatile foundations than this one. What the fuck is he doing? Aelin of the Wildfire might very well mark you as an enemy, should we make a true union. Aelin will not risk killing an ally, not right now, and she will discover that she is not the only one capable of saving this world. Perhaps she'll even come to thank me, if she's as eager to avoid being sacrificed as you claim. Maeve's red mouth curved upward. You are young and brash. Dorian sketched a bow again. I'm also exceedingly handsome and willing to offer up my throne in a gesture of good faith. I could sell you to Erwin right now, and he would reward me handsomely. Reward you, as if you were a hound bringing back a pheasant to its master. Dorian laughed, and her eyes flashed. It was you who just posed this alliance between us, not me. But consider this. Shall you kneel, or shall you rule, Maeve? He tapped his neck, right over the pale band across it. I've knelt, and found I have no interest in doing so again. Not for Erwin, or for Aelin, or anyone. Another shrug. The woman I love is dead. My kingdom is in pieces. What do I have to lose? He let some of the old ice, the hollowness in his chest, rise to his face. I'm willing to play this game. Are you? Maeve fell silent again. And slowly, those phantom hands crept into the corners of his mind. He let her see the truth she sought. He withstood it, that probing touch. At last, Maeve loosed a breath through her nose. You came to Morath for a key, and will leave with a bride. He nearly sagged with relief. I will leave with both, and quickly. And how do you propose we are to find what we seek? Dorian smiled at the Fae Queen, the Val Queen. Leave that to me. What the fuck is he doing? This is not... What the fuck are we doing right now? What are we doing? I feel dumb because I don't understand what we're doing. What he's doing. Atop Morath's highest tower, hours later, Dorian peered at the army. Campfires littering the valley floors. His raven's feathers ruffled in the frozen wind of the surrounding peaks. The screams and snarling had quieted, at least, as if even Morath's dungeon masters maintain ordinary hours of working. He might have found the idea darkly funny if he didn't know what manner of things was being broken and bred here. His cousin, Roland, had wound up here. He knew it, though no one had even confirmed it. Had he survived the transition to Val Prince, or had he merely been a meal for one of the terrors who prowled this place? He lifted his head, scanning the cloudy sky. The moon was a pale blur behind them, a trickle of light that seemed keen to remain hidden from Morath's watchful eyes. A dangerous game. He was playing one hell of a dangerous game. Did Gavin watch him now, from wherever he rested? Had he learned with what manner of monster Dorian had allied himself with? He didn't dare to summon the king here, not with Erwin so close. Close enough that Dorian might have attacked. Perhaps he'd been a fool not to. Perhaps he'd been a fool to attempt it, as Kaltain had warned, when it might reveal their mission. When Erwin had those collars on hand, Dorian cast a glance to the adjacent tower, where Maeve slept. A dangerous, dangerous game. The dark tower beyond her seemed to throb with power. The council room down the hall from it was still lit, however, and in the hall, motion. People striding past the torches, hurrying. Stupid, utterly stupid, and yet he found himself flapping into the frigid night, found himself banking, then swooping to a cracked window along the hallway. He pushed the window open a bit farther with his beak and listened. Months. I've been here, and now he refuses my counsel. A tall, thin man stomped down the hall, away from Erwin's council room, toward the tower door at the end of the hall and the blank-faced guards stationed there. At his side, two shorter men struggled to keep up. One of them said, Erwin's motives are mysterious indeed, Lord Vernon. He does nothing without reason. Have faith in him. Dorian froze. Vernon Lockin, Alid's uncle. His magic surged, ice cracking over the windowsill. Dorian tracked the lanky lord while he stormed past, his dark fur cape drooping to the stones. I've had faith in him beyond what could be expected, Vernon snapped. The lord and his lackeys gave the tower door a wide berth as they passed it, turned the corner, and vanished, their voices fading with them. Dorian surveyed the empty hall, the council room at the far end, the door still ajar. He didn't hesitate, didn't give himself time to reconsider as he crafted his plan, and waited. Erwin emerged an hour later. Dorian's heart thundered through him, but he kept his position in the hall, kept his shoulders straight and hands behind his back, precisely how he'd appeared to the guards when he'd rounded the corner, having flown off to a quiet hall before shifting and striding here. The Val King surveyed him once, and his mouth tightened. I thought I dismissed you for the night, Vernon. Dorian bowed his head, willing his breathing steady with each step Erwin made toward him. His magic stirred, recoiling in terror at the creature who approached, but he forced it deep down, to a place where Erwin would not detect it, as he had not yet detected Dorian earlier. Perhaps the raw magic in him also erased any traceable scent. Dorian bowed his head. I had returned to my chambers, but I realized I had a lingering question, my lord. He prayed Erwin didn't notice the different clothes, the sword that he kept half hidden beneath his cloak. Prayed Erwin decided that Vernon had gone back to his room, changed, and returned. And prayed that he spoke enough like the Lord of Parenth to be convincing. A sniveling, groveling man, the sort who'd sell his own niece to a demon king. What is it? Erwin stalked down the hall to his tower, a nightmare wrapped in a beautiful body. Strike him now. Kill him. And yet Dorian knew he hadn't come here for that. Not at all. He kept his head down, voice low. Why? Erwin slid golden, glowing eyes toward him. Manon's eyes. Why what? You might have made yourself lord of a dozen other territories, and yet you graced us with this one. I've long wondered why. Erwin's eyes narrowed to slits, and Dorian kept his face the portrait of groveling curiosity. Had Vernon asked this before? A stupid gamble. If Erwin noticed the sword at his side, my brothers and I plan to conquer this world, to add it to the trove that we've already taken. Erwin's golden hair danced with the light of the torches as he walked the long hall. Dorian had a feeling that when they reached the tower at the far end, the conversation would be through. We arrived at this one, encountered a surprising amount of resistance, and they were banished back. I could do nothing less while trapped here than to repay this world for the blow they dealt us. So I will make this world into a mirror of our homeland, to honor my brothers, and to prepare it for their return. Dorian sifted through countless lessons on the royal houses of their lands and said, I too know what it is to have a brotherly rival. He gave the king a simpering smile. You killed yours, Erwin said, bored already. I love my brothers dearly. The idea was laughable. Half the hallway remained until the tower door. Will you truly decimate this world then, all who dwell in it, those who do not kneel? Maeve at least wished to preserve it, to rule, but to preserve it. Would they receive collars and rings, or to clean death? Erwin surveyed him sidelong. You've never wondered for the sake of your people, not even the sake of your niece, failure that she was. Dorian made himself cringe and bowed his head. I apologize again for that, my lord. She's a clever girl. So clever, it seems, that one confrontation with you and you were scared away. Dorian again bowed his head. I will go hunt for her, if that is what you wish. I am aware that she no longer has what I seek, and it is now lost to me. A loss you brought me. The word Kealee had carried, given to her by Kaltane. Dorian wondered if Vernon had indeed been lying low for months now, avoiding this conversation. He cringed again. Tell me how to rectify it, my lord, and it will be done. Erwin halted, and Dorian's mouth went dry. His magic coiled within him, bracing, but he made himself look the king in the face, meet the eyes of the creature who had brought about so much suffering. Your bloodline proved useless to me, Vernon, Erwin said, a shade too softly. Shall I find another use for you here at Morath? Dorian knew precisely what sort of uses the man would have. He lifted supplicating hands. I am your servant, my lord. Erwin stared at him for long heartbeats. Then he said, Go. Dorian straightened, letting Erwin stride a few more feet toward the tower. The blank-faced guards posted at its doors stepped aside as he approached. Do you truly hate them? Dorian blurted. Erwin half turned toward him. Dorian asked. The humans, Aelin Galathinius, Dorian Havillard, all of them. Do you truly hate them? Why do you make us suffer so greatly? Erwin's golden eyes guttered. They would keep me from my brothers, he said. I will let nothing stand in the way of my reunion with them. Surely there might be another way to reunite you. Without such a great war. Erwin's stare swept over him, and Dorian held still, willing his scent to remain unremarkable, the shift to keep its form. Where would the fun be in that? The Val King asked, and turned back toward the hall. Did the former king of Ardalan ask such questions? The words broke from him. Erwin again paused. He was not so faithful a servant as you might believe, and look what it cost him. He fought you. Not quite a question. He never bowed. Not completely. Dorian was stunned enough that he opened his mouth, but Erwin began walking away again, and said without looking back, You ask many questions, Vernon. A great many questions. I find them tiresome. Dorian bowed, even with Erwin's back to him, but the Val King continued on, opening the tower door to reveal a lightless interior and shut it behind him. A clock chimed midnight. Off-kilter and odious, and Dorian strode back down the hall, finding another route to Maeve's chambers. A quick shift in a shadowed alcove had him scuttling along the floor again, his mouse's eyes seeing well enough in the dark. Only embers remained in the fireplace when he slid beneath the door. In the dark, Maeve said from the bed, You're a fool. Dorian shifted again, back into his own body. For what? I know where you went, who you sought. Her voice slithered through the darkness. You're a fool. When he didn't reply, she asked, Did you plan to kill him? I don't know. You couldn't face him and live. Casual, stark words. Dorian didn't need to touch Damaris to know they were true. He would have put another collar around your throat. I know. Perhaps he could have learned that where the Val King kept them and destroyed the cache. This alliance shall not work if you were sneaking off and acting like a reckless boy, Maeve hissed. I know, he repeated, the words hollow. Maeve sighed when he didn't say more. Did you at least find what you were seeking? Dorian lay down before the fire, curling an arm beneath his head. No. Damn. Chapter 72. This is our last chapter. From a distance, the ferry and gap did not look like the outpost for a good number of Morath's aerial legion, nor did it look, Nesrin decided, like it had been breeding wyverns for years. She supposed that the lack of any obvious signs of a Val King's presence was part of why it remained secret for so long. Sailing closer to the towering twin peaks that flanked either side, the northern fang on one, the Omega on the other, and separated the White Fangs from the Rune Mountains, Nesrin could barely make out the structures built into either one. Like the Eredun Eyrie, and yet not at all. The Eredun's mountain home was full of motion and life. What had been built in the gap, connected by a stone bridge near its top, was silent, cold, and bleak. Snow half blinded Nesrin, but Salki swept toward the peaks, staying high. Bort and Arcus came in from the north, little more than dark shadows amid the whipping white. Far behind them, out in the valley, plain beyond the gap, one half of their army waited, the rucks with them, waited for Nesrin and Bort, along with the other scouts who had gone out, to report back that the time was ripe to attack. They'd made the river crossing under cover of darkness last night, and those the rucks could not carry had been brought over on boats. A precarious position to be in on that plain before the gap. The Avery forked at their backs, effectively hemming them in. Much of it had been frozen, but not nearly thick enough to risk crossing on foot. Should this battle go poorly, there would be nowhere to run. Nesrin nudged Salki, coming around the northern fang from the southern side. Far below, the whirling snows cleared enough to reveal what seemed to be a back gate into the mountains. No sign of sentries or any wyverns. Perhaps the weather had driven them all inside. She glanced southward, into the fangs, but there was no sign of the second half of their army, marching north through the peaks themselves to come at the gap from the western entrance. A far more treacherous journey than the one they'd made. But if they timed it right, if they drew out the host in the gap onto the plain just before the others arrived from the west, they might crush Morath's forces between them. And that was without the unleashed power of Aelin Galathinius and her consort and court. Salki arced around the northern fang. Distantly, Nesrin could make out Bort doing the same around the Omega, but there was no sign of their enemy. And when Nesrin and Bort did another pass through the Farian Gap, even going so far as to soar between the two peaks, they found no sign either, as if the enemy had vanished. The White Fangs were utterly unforgiving. The wild men who led them kept the mountains from being fatal, knowing which passes might be wiped out by snow, which might have an unsteady ice shelf, which were too open to any eyes flying overhead. Even with the army trailing behind, Cale marveled at the speed of their travel, at how, after 3 days, they cleared the mountains themselves and stepped onto the flat, snow-blasted western plains beyond. He'd never set foot in the territory, though it was technically his. The official border of Ardalan claimed the plains past the Fangs for a good distance before they yielded to the unnamed territories of the Wastes. But it still felt like the Wastes, eerily quiet and sprawling, a strange expanse that stretched unbreaking to the horizon. Even the stoic Khaganate warriors did not look too long toward the wastes as they at their left as they rode northward. At night, they huddled closer to their fires. All of them did. Irene clung a bit tighter at night, whispering about the strangeness of the land, its hollow silence. As if the land itself does not sing, she said a few times now, shuddering as she did. A far better place, Cale thought, as they rode northward, skirting the edge of the Fangs on their right, for Erwin to make his empire. Hell, they might have even given it to him if he'd set up his fortress deep on the plain and kept to it. We're a day out from the gap, one of the wild men, Kai, said to Cale as they rode through an unusually sunny morning. We'll camp south of the northern Fang tonight, and tomorrow morning's march will take us into the gap itself. There was another reason the wild men had allied with them, beyond the territory they stood to gain. Witches had hunted their kind this spring. Entire clans and camps left in bloody ribbons. Many had been reduced to cinders, and the few survivors had whispered of a dark-haired woman with unholy power. Cale was willing to bet it had been Keltane, but had not told the wild men that particular threat, at least, had been erased, or had incinerated herself in the end. It wouldn't matter to them anyway. Of the 200 or so wild men who had joined their armies since they'd left Anil, all had come to the Farian Gap to extract vengeance on the witches, on Morath. Cale refrained from mentioning that he himself had killed one of their kind almost a year ago. It might as well have been a decade ago for all that had happened since he'd killed Cain during his duel with Aelin. Yulmus was still weeks away if they survived long enough to celebrate it. It's only been a year? It's only been a year? It hasn't even been a year. It hasn't even been a year. What? Oh my god. Cale said to the slim, bearded man who made up for his lack of his clansman's traditional bulk with quick wit and sharp eyes. Is there a place that might hide an army this large tonight? Kai shook his head. Not this close. Tonight would be the greatest risk. Cale glanced to the distant healers' wagons where Irene rode. working on any soldiers who had fallen ill or injured on the trek. He hadn't seen her since they'd awoken, but he'd known she'd spent their ride today healing. The tightness in his spine grew with each mile. "We'll just have to pray," Cale said, turning to the towering mountain, taking shape before them. "The gods don't come to these lands," was all Kai said before he fell back with a group of his own people. A horse eased up beside his own, and he found Aelin bundled in a fur-lined cloak, a hand on Goldbrand's hilt. Gavriel rode behind her, Fenris at his side. The former kept an eye upon the western plains, the latter monitoring the wall of peaks to their right. Both golden-haired Fey males remained silent, however, as Aelin frowned at Kai's disappearing form. "That man has a flair for the dramatic that should have earned him a place on some of Rifthold's finest stages. Fine praise indeed, coming from you." She winked, patting Goldrun's ruby pommel. The stone seemed to flare in response. "I know a kindred spirit when I see one." Despite the battle that awaited them, Cale chuckled, but then Aelin said, "Rowan and the Cadre have been tunneling into their power for the past few days." She nodded over her shoulder to Fenris and Gavriel, then to where Rowan rode at the head of the company, the Fey Prince's silver hair bright as the sun on snow around them. "So have I. We'll make sure nothing harms this army tonight." A knowing glance toward the healers' wagons. "Certain areas will be especially guarded." Cale nodded his thanks. Having Aelin able to use her powers, having her companions wielding them too, would make the battle far, far easier. Wyverns might not be able to get close enough to touch their soldiers if Aelin could blast them from the skies, or Rowan could snap their wings with a gust of wind, or just rip the air from their lungs. He'd seen enough of Fenris's and Gavriel's fighting in Anil to know that even without as much magic, they'd be lethal. And Lorcan. Cale didn't look over his shoulder to where Lorcan and Elide rode. The Dark Warrior's powers weren't anything Cale ever wished to face. With an answering nod, Aelin trotted to Rowan's side, the ruby in Goldrun's hilt like a small sun. Fenris followed, guarding the queen's back even amongst allies. Yet Gavriel remained, guiding his horse beside Phoracia. The black mare eyed the warrior's gelding, then made no move to bite him. Thank the gods. The lion gave him a tight smile. "I did not have a chance to congratulate you on your happy news." An odd thing for the warrior to say, given that he'd barely spoken beyond councils. But Cale bowed his head. "Thank you." Gavriel stared toward the snow and mountains, toward the distant north. "I was not granted the opportunity you have, to be present from the start, to see my son grow into a man." Cale thought of it, of the life growing in Irene's womb, of the child they'd raise, thought of what Gavriel had not experienced. "I'm sorry." It was the only thing really to say. Gavriel shook his head, tawny eyes glowing golden, flecks of emerald emerging in the blinding sun. "I didn't tell you for sympathy." The lion looked at him, and Cale felt the weight of every one of Gavriel's centuries weighing upon him, but rather to tell you what you perhaps already know, to savor every moment of it. Yes, if they survived this war, he would. Every damn second. Gavriel angled the reins as if to lead his horse back to his companions, but Cale said, "I'm guessing that Adian has not made it easy for you to appear in his life." Gavriel's face tightened. He has every reason not to. And though Adian was Gavriel's son, Cale said, "I'm sure you already know this, but Adian is as stubborn and hot-headed as they come." He jerked his chin toward Aelin, riding ahead, saying something to Fenris that made Rowan snicker. And Fenris bark a laugh. Aelin and Adian might as well be twins. That Gavriel didn't stop him told Cale he'd read the lingering wound in the lion's eyes well enough. Both of them will often say one thing but mean something else entirely, and then deny it until their last breath. Cale shook his head. "Give Adian time. When we reach Orinth, I have a feeling that Adian will be happier to see you than he lets on. I'm bringing back his queen and riding with an army. I think he'd be happy to see his most hated enemy if they did that for him." Worry paled the lion's tan features, not for the reunion, but for what his son might be facing in the north. Cale considered. "My father's a bastard," he said quietly. "He's been in my life from my conception, yet he never once bothered to ask the questions you pose." Cale said, "He never once cared enough to do so. He never once worried. That will be the difference. If Adian chooses to forgive me, he will," Cale said. "He'd make Adian do it. Period! As he should!" "Why are you so certain?" Cale considered his words carefully before he again met Gavriel's striking gaze. "Because you're his father," he said, "and no matter what might lie between you, Adian will always want to forgive you." There it was, his own secret shame still wearing within him after all his father had done, even after the trunk full of his mother's letters. That was shitty. That was so bad. And Adian will realize, in his own way, that you went to save Aelin not for her sake, or Rowan's, but for his, and that you stayed with them and marched in this army for his sake too. The lion gazed northward, eyes flickering. "I hope you're right." No attempt at denial that all Gavriel had done and would do was for Adian alone, that he was marching north into sure hell for Adian. The warrior began to edge his horse past him again, but Cale found himself saying, I wish I had been so lucky to have you as my father. I wish that you could have been his son. I really do. Because Adian deserves a father like Cale's father. Truly. Truly he does. Truly he fucking does. Sorry, my mom called. Y'all, she has been in a bad mood all day. All day. Am I back or no? The thing is yellow. My light is yellow, which tells me that I might not be back. Okay. Yes, she's been in a bad mood all day and has been taking it out on absolutely everybody. She just called me and she was like, "Do we not have any rice?" And I was like, "I don't know." I was like, "I finished it, but I don't know if there was another bag." And she was like, "I was at H-E-B yesterday. Why did you not tell me we don't have any rice?" And I was like, "Well, I finished it after you came back. And I didn't know that there wasn't another bag. Like, I didn't check." And she was like, started going off, "Y'all never tell me when we run out of things, da 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 da." And I was like, is there something I can do for you, or did you just call to yell at me?" And she was like, "Bring rice when you come to the house." And I was like, "Okay, bye." Like, girl, they're miserable. Everyone has to be miserable. Exactly. Like, my God, I'm just trying to read my book in peace. Can't even do that. And yes, that's why I don't even do lives at my house or like lives in my yard anymore, because she will come to my window, bang on my window, and cause a whole scene. So annoying. Anyways, continuing on to father of the century, Gavriel. Surprise and something far deeper paced across Gavriel's face. His tattooed throat bobbed. "Thank you. Perhaps it is our lot to never have the fathers we wish, but to still hope they might surpass what they are, flaws and all." Cale refrained from telling Gavriel he was already more than enough. Gavriel said quietly, "I shall endeavor to be worthy of my son." Wait, he already is. He literally already is enough. It's Adian that doesn't deserve him, and it's Adian that's not enough. Cale was about to mutter that Adian had better deem the lion worthy when two forms took shape in the skies above, large, dark, and moving fast. Cale grabbed for the bow strapped across his back as soldiers cried out. Gavriel's own bow already aimed skyward, but Rowan shouted above the fray, "Hold your fire." Galloping hooves thundered toward them. Then Aelin and the Fey Prince were there, a latter announcing, "It's Nesrint and Bort." Within minutes, the two women had descended, their rucks crusted with ice from the air high above the peaks. "How bad is it?" Aelin asked, now joined by Fenris, Lorcan, and Lead. Bort winced. "It makes no sense. None of it." Nesrint explained before Cale could tell the girl to get to the point. "We've gone through the gap thrice now, even landed in the Omega." She shook her head. "It's empty." "Empty?" Cale asked. "Not a soul there." The Fey warriors glanced to one another at that. "A few of the furnaces were still going, so someone must be there," Bort said. "But there wasn't one witch or wyvern. Whoever remains behind is minimal, likely no more than trainers or breeders." The Farian gap was empty. The Iron Teeth Legion gone. Rowan scanned the peak ahead. We need to learn what they know. We need to learn what they know then. Nesrin's nod was grim. Sartak already has people on it. The end. Oh my god. Where's my bookmark? Oh, it's right here. Well. Y'all, and okay, so touching back on Gabriel, my theory was that he was going to die for him, right? That they were going to be in the heat of battle, something was going to go wrong or something was going to happen, and Gabriel was going to fall on his sword for Adian, and then Adian would finally realize that, you know, he's a good dad. I no longer, and I didn't want it to happen to begin with, but like I was okay with it happening because that's how I saw his story ending. I no longer want that to happen. Like, Adian doesn't deserve that. And I don't want Gabriel to die for this ungrateful son that he has. I don't want that. I don't want it. I don't want it. Please tell me that doesn't happen. I don't want that to happen. It's probably gonna happen. I'm gonna be really sad. I'll be crying for Ro when Gabriel dies. I just know his character is just the type of character that would absolutely die, and everyone's gonna be torn up about it. Everyone's gonna be broken up about it. Like, we're all gonna have a good cry, but like I feel like it's kind of inevitable. I'm sat here thinking about how many people are gonna die, and it's just like my stomach hurt. Damn. Not looking forward to the next part of the book. Oh, also, y'all, okay, my ADHD has been so bad this month. I have not read a single book, but I have started at least 6. This is the 6th book I've started this month. I started Breaking Dawn, put that down. I started The Cruel Prince back up again because I had started it earlier and then I got distracted by Twilight. Put that down. I started another book I had ordered. Put that down. I started the Ice Barbarians book. Put that down. Oh no, this is the 5th book I've started. Sorry, not the 6th. But I started this book, and I'm already on like what chapter am I on? I'm on chapter 5, and so far it's holding my attention. And it's not that the other books were bad or like weren't like attention grabbing, but like literally I have the attention span of like a squirrel. So if I go through one boring chapter, I'm like, on to the next. I'm 15 books and counting for this month alone. That's amazing. I wish I could do that. I get so frustrated with myself. Oh no, I'm lying. This is the 6th book I've started because I had started A Light in the Flame, I think, back up again, and I put it down. So yes, this is the 6th book this month I have started. Ugh, so frustrating. So frustrating. I wish I could just pick up one book and finish a book and not get distracted, or like literally even if I put it down and I just like, I don't even know. You just need to find a book that gets you really hyped, I guess. But like I don't know. I think it's just ADHD, and like my attention span is not it with reading anymore. And I don't know why, because I used to sit and I used to just devour books. Like I would devour them, and now I'm just like, I can't even get through 10 chapters of one book. I also wanted to start the Mindfuck series. I downloaded it, I think it's on Kindle Unlimited, and I downloaded it because my friend had said that it was a really, really good series. And so I downloaded that. We'll see. This is also why I can't read book series that have more than like 3 or 4 books, because I get bored of reading about the same characters. Like, I want new characters. I want a new story. I want new conflicts. The only reason but I feel like I would have finished this series on my own. But like I couldn't finish Breaking Dawn because I was like, I'm tired of reading about Bella. I want something different. I was like that for 2 years. Maybe I'm just going through it then. It was a classic of all things. I was gonna start Wuthering Heights because I have Wuthering Heights. I've had it for a long time and I've been wanting to read it for a long time, and I just never brought myself around to it. Maybe I should reread Pride and Prejudice, because Pride and Prejudice is like one of my favorite books. I love that book. I'll just skip the middle part when she goes to her, what is it, her cousin's house? Her uncle's house? No, her cousin. But classics are good. There are some really good classics out there. I've read some of them. They're good. Really good. I started Wuthering Heights 2 years ago and I haven't finished it. Well, damn. There we go. Maybe I won't pick up Wuthering Heights then. Alright. Next live will probably not be until Saturday because I have work. So tired of my job, man. I'm so tired of it. I am going to Puerto Rico in July because my cousin is getting married there. His fiance is from there. They're having their wedding there. And I'm so excited about it. Right? Obviously I should be. It's a big trip. I am so stressed to ask off for work because my boss is literally like, asking off is a cardinal sin in our workplace, and I have to ask off for 7 days. Mind you, this is in July, so it's not for a while, and you better right now. No, literally. And I'm also going to New York. I booked my hotel, so I am going to New York in March for my spring break. And the tickets were, I was gonna fly back on Sunday because we have Thursday and Friday off for spring break. And so I was gonna fly back that Sunday so that I wouldn't have to miss work. But the tickets were like $200 to $400 more expensive flying back on Sunday than flying back the next day, like on that Monday. And so I'm like, well, I don't want to spend an extra $400 on tickets, so yes, the city, New York City. I'm going to go see Phantom because I refuse to go about my life without ever seeing Phantom. And yeah. So I have just booked it. So good. I know. And see, I saw your, yeah, I was gonna say, I saw your Instagram story and I was like, literally, like, I can't go about my life without ever have seen Phantom or like Wicked or Hamilton or Hadestown or anything like that. So I was like, no, I'm going. Booking tickets on a Tuesday afternoon is cheaper. I know it is, but my boss would literally kill me. So now I'm like, I can't take any more days off for like the rest of this year because I'm going to Puerto Rico and then I'm going to New York. Mind you, New York is just 1 day, but I also just had COVID and I had to miss 2 days. So like in her book, I've been out a lot. I have been out a lot lately. And so she's gonna eat me up. She's gonna eat me up. Oh yeah, she's gonna kill me. And so now I'm like, I'm stressing about it. And my mom was like, just tell her you'll be out that week because we fly out on a Thursday. We fly out on a Thursday, right? July 13th, I think, is when we fly out. And then so I'll be gone from work Thursday, Friday, and then that Saturday, Sunday, and then all the next week. And my mom was like, just don't tell her about Thursday, Friday. Just tell her about that last week. And I'm like, but I have to have those days off because I will not be in the state. And she was like, well, we'll just get there when we get there. Like, you can tell her when it gets closer. And I'm like, I'd rather just rip the Band-Aid now. Yeah. So pray for me because I'm going to be doing that tomorrow. Stressed out. Ooh, and then I have to put in my request for New York. I'm stressing. Anyway, that's not y'all's problem. Thank y'all for coming today. I will see y'all Saturday, most likely. Yes, if I don't have anything going on. I don't think I have anything going on. Probably Sunday. I'll probably see y'all Sunday. If you need a hype squad, we're here for you. I know y'all are. Love you. Thank you. Will I need the hoodie for the next chapter? Because I feel like we're getting closer and closer to a battle. And I personally I would like to be prepared. If I need the hoodie, will I need the hoodie for next week's chapters? I don't think so. Okay, good. Okay, so then we're good. All right, well, let me go buy some rice because, oh my God. Yeah. Anyway, I love y'all, and I will see y'all next week. Bye.